For a pretty routine 50s juvenile delinquency movie, The Bloody Brood starts off on a macabre note. Several slacking beatniks are talking bitterly about contemporary mores in a coffee house, where else, when an old man suddenly doubles over from a heart attack. Instead of doing the square conventional thing, that is, calling an ambulance, the detached youths stand around and watch him die.
It's the greatest show on earth. Spontaneous. It's unrehearsed. There's only one performance. Dave, Francis, you're supposed to be writers. Here's a real live death scene for you. Nothing left to the imagination.
We soon learn these aren't just any average hoods. Nicos is a celebrity in the local counterculture, perpetually throwing parties at borrowed houses and running a tidy drug business on the side. The incident at the coffee shop plays at Nicos' mind, and he takes Francis aside to propose that they commit a murder, simply to enjoy the kicks that come from witnessing death firsthand. He finds a receptive ear in Francis, who works directing television commercials, when he describes his plan as a way of transforming spectatorship into power.
We can give death real meaning. Decide who dies and when. You're in TV. You're a bright young director. You make dreams come true for people in gray flannel suits. What's it called when you can control the real thing? Huh? See, that's power.
Those familiar with the idea of the haunted camera, the camera that kills, an idea explored in later movies like The Last House on Dead End Street, Hardcore, and 8mm, will see the fledgling version of a familiar theme here. As Nico and Francis are talking, a telegram delivery boy comes to the door. They entice him in and feed him a laced hamburger. Cut to a phone booth in the street. The boy calls his brother, a mortal agony in his gut, and dies on the phone. After the murder, we see Francis directing a detergent commercial. He berates his staff and complains, Lady Macbeth style, of suddenly being afflicted with ulcers. The guilty projection here is hard to miss. Nico is calmer, aware as he is how hard motiveless crimes are to solve. One Inspector McCloud, the detective assigned to the case, shares Nico's pessimism that the killer or killers will ever be caught. The messenger boy's distraught older brother Cliff, though, is more proactive. Following his brother's delivery route, he happens on Nico's traveling party troupe and goes undercover, sparking a love interest in the meantime with Brooke, an ambivalent beatnik newbie. Driven but inexperienced, Cliff soon blows his cover, but at the same time the infighting between the sociopathic Nico and his underlings threatens to blow the lid off the case, and before long the whole affair cascades into wholesale violence. When I describe Bloody Brood as a typical delinquency movie, I don't mean to put it down, but to put the juvie movie up. Despite their reputation for cheap cynicism, many of the old juvies are actually earnest, well-written, well-acted, and melodramatic in the best sense. The stereotypical strokes with which they often paint the beat poets has always grated on me. It's impossible to recognize Kerouac or even Burroughs in the mindless hoodlums these films try to pass off as beats. But if you're going to portray beatniks as inscrutable psychopaths, you might as well do it right. Bloody Brood does. Peter Falk, in a movie about as unlike The Princess Bride as is imaginable, menaces the screen as a lazy-eyed Nico. The craven and reprehensible Francis is also a high point in a movie filled with truly loathsome villains, which is as it should be. Juvie movie aficionados may have noticed, I certainly have, that the chaotic conclusions often seem to imitate the fifth act catastrophes of Shakespeare's tragedies, in which mostly all the major players die. Bloody Brood takes this a step further, borrowing Hamlet's play-in-a-play conceit, as Cliff, undercover, bribes a partying poet to read a composition. It accuses Nico of murder by mentioning details of the crime that only he would know. The poem itself, though, is hardly Shakespeare.
Patty cake, puzzle for fools. Some like it hot, some like it cool, some like it lethal, with ground glass and such. Pick a patsy for the caper. No one will miss him much. So dig this message, Daddy. It's for you and all the rest. No one got it until now. Because the telegram said death.
One of the most amusing traits of the beatnik movie is its habit of confusing beat poetry with nursery rhyme. And this goes again to the broader disdain and fear of the youth counterculture that seem to drive these movies. They give beats the same benefit of the doubt pot smokers enjoy in reefer madness. Ironically, though, the proto-libertarian justification the beats offer for dropping out, that is, that conventional society doesn't offer the security or sense of purpose it promises, and the only worthwhile experience is kicks, the drive-through pleasure of the senses. This justification is actually borne out in the film. Though McCloud repeatedly chastises Cliff to leave the investigation to professional law enforcement, the police in Bloody Brood are ineffective, and Cliff can only get justice by dropping out in his own way, the way Paul Kersey does later in Death Wish. So forget the straw man version of the beat philosophy the Bloody Brood gives us. If the movie portrayed the beats more fairly, the movie makers, as well as we in the audience, might have found more to identify with than we imagine.
Well, there you have it. Now, the world falls apart on page 1. They put it together again on the sport page.